The Food and Drug Administration decided that genetically modified organisms were the functional equivalent of conventional foods.
Welcome to Alternative Mummy.
And without testing GMOs for allergenicity, toxicity, antibiotic resistance, and functional characteristics.
Exploring the natural side of everyday issues. With your host, Ray.
Alzheimer's disease was a disease that did not exist 40 years ago.
On Global Fact Radio.
That it used to be 1 in 10,000 kids got autism. It's now 1 in 88.
Mercury-containing vaccines may help, not harm kids. President Obama this week signed into law a Monsanto Protection Act.
And now at age 50, 60, we have 80 out of 100 people with gluten intolerance because of this criminal advice to restrict salt.
Hi, and thank you for joining us on this episode of Alternative Mummy. I'm your host, Ray, and this episode we're going to be talking about everything organic, gardens, pesticides, and lots of information. We're also going to be joined by special guest, Farmer Shane, and he has had several years of experiencing farming and has lots of fantastic information for us. Broadcasting live on Network Radio.
So turn off your television sets, turn them off now, turn them off and leave them off.
So to start us off today, I would like to share with you Wikipedia's definition of organic food. So, organic foods are foods that are produced using methods of organic farming. Organic farming, obviously, does not involve modern synthetic inputs such as pesticides and chemical fertilizers. Organic foods are also not processed using industrial solvents or chemical food additives. The organic farming movement arose in the 1940s in response to the industrialization of agriculture known as the Green Revolution. Organic food production is a heavily regulated industry distinct from private gardening. Currently, the European Union, the United States, Canada, as well as Japan and many other countries require producers to obtain special certification in order to market food as organic within their boundaries. Alright, so for the vast majority of history, agriculture can be described as having been organic. Only recently, during the 20th century, was a large supply of new chemicals introduced to the food supply. So the organic farming movement arose in the 1940s in response to the industrialization, as I said before, known as the Green Revolution. So let's talk about, here we go, let me just pull this up. The difference between organic and conventional foods. So this is an interesting article I found on New Frontiers Natural Marketplace, and I encourage you to check out this website. There's lots of great information and lots of products that you can actually buy as well. So this is what they have to say on the difference between organic and conventional foods. Sales of organic products continued to grow last year with annual sales figures $30 billion for the first time ever. Of this, $29.22 billion came from organic foods and beverages, and $2.2 million were from organic non-food beverages, body cares, etc. So organic food sales grew 9.4% for the year. 9.4% is huge. Like when you're talking marketing and business, a 9.4 increase is huge profit. Huge. While the popularity of organic food continues to increase, there are still plenty of people who don't know what organic food is or how it differs from regular or conventional food. So the United States Department of Agriculture has established specific requirements that must be verified by an accredited third-party certifying agent before products can be labeled organic. The use of synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, irrigation, sewage sludge, hormones, antibiotics, and genetic engineering is strictly prohibited. In general, organic operations must demonstrate that they are protecting natural resources and conserving biodiversity. So I'd like to talk about a little bit of local. In my opinion, and from what I have seen just shopping around in my supermarkets, in my local farmers market, in the local farmer stands at the end of the driveway. I live in Brant County, so I'm really privileged to be surrounded by just tons and tons of different farmers of tons of different stuff. So you actually get the opportunity to talk to the farmer and, ask them, hey, what do you use for fertilizer? How long did it take you to grow that? Or, how's the season this year compared to last year? Farmers love, to talk about their work. Who doesn't, right? So what I've learned, like I said, of going around to these different places is just because it's not marked organic doesn't necessarily mean it's not so. Now, the reason I say this is because the organic process obviously is a very strict regimen of different things that you have to qualify to get that label. And that's great and that's fantastic. But there's a lot of people that are just local that don't have those stamps, but in all sense of the word that's important is...
Are you like me and drink coffee and tea every day? I know I'm totally hooked, but I don't like the effects. However, I've tried this coffee and tea that not only tastes great, but is a much healthier choice. And I know that sounds impossible, but it's anti-aging, builds the immune system, increases energy, and it's GMO free. You've got to try it out at perceptioniseverything.com. That's perceptioniseverything.com.
You're listening to Network Radio, live from the Media Broadcasting Center. Simulcasting on Global Fact Radio.
All right, here we go again. So you can get organic food from your local farmers market. Just go check them out. Go talk to the farmers. Go talk to them. Ask them questions and find out what do they use for fertilizer. Do they use chemicals? Are they Monsanto promoters? I bet you they're probably not. Ask them what they think of Monsanto, and I bet you it would be a very interesting conversation that strikes up immediately. So there's also another angle I want to touch on is that one of the biggest complaints among ordinary families that are trying to eat healthy is that clean organic food is simply too expensive and thus out of reach for the average budget. And at the beginning, I will admit that's absolutely what I thought too. But honestly, eating right does not have to break the bank. If anything, eating right and eating healthy is cheaper than eating garbage and putting all these toxins and chemicals in your body. I wish I would have started, like a notebook, a running total of every time I went grocery shopping, because every time I used to go, I'd buy, a case of pop and, a half a dozen bag of chips and, some horrible high fructose corn syrup donuts and some packaged brownies and some all kinds of other garbage like that. And that stuff's expensive. Like, really, really expensive. I was spending on average about $200, $250 on groceries every, 2 weeks. Are you okay? Okay. Mommy's trying to do a radio show, okay? Yeah. Love you. So I was spending about $200, $250 every 2 weeks on groceries, and the majority of it was what I call now filler and junk. Now I go to the grocery store more often, but I'm spending a lot less in the grand scheme of things. At the end of the month, when I tally up everything, our average groceries is significantly less than it was. I'm going more frequently because you need to go frequently to get your fresh fruits and vegetables, because obviously that stuff doesn't last forever. Now there's ways that you can preserve their longevity, and that's by, you can do things like we've talked about before in previous episodes. When you bring your stuff home, rinsing it in a vinegar water solution, not only does it rinse off any potential chemicals, dirt, germs, bacteria, fingerprints, all the handlers or whatnot, but also actually preserves them a little bit too. Not putting everything in the fridge. I recently, the last couple of years, found that out. I always put my tomatoes in the fridge and my apples in the fridge and everything in the fridge. But now you put your apples, or I've learned that you put some things out and they last longer. As well, actually, I was just told recently too by a very wise woman that if you go to the supermarket and sometimes you get, or the farmer's market, or the farmers under their driveway, if you're as privileged as I am, and you can buy some pints of strawberries, and sometimes you get ones that have just a little bit of white on the tips or the tops, and what you can do to quickly, well, not quickly I guess, but instead of throwing them out, you can put them in a brown paper bag and they will actually ripen within a day or so. So instead of, wasting food and losing out on that or cutting that piece off, just, pop it in a brown paper bag and you're good to go. So like I said, a very wise woman told me that actually just the other day. So actually, I think at that, let's bring us to our alternative tip of the week.
And now it's time for my mummy's alternative tip of the week.
Oh, I just love that. That's my daughter, Melody, and every time I hear that, it brings a tear to my eye. It's just, I'm very proud of her, and she's just got the cutest little voice, wouldn't you agree? Alright, anyway, so our alternative tip of the week is a do-it-yourself weed killer. So talking with about gardens and farming and stuff like that, even though sometimes you may pull the weeds once a week or put down your mesh on the ground or whatever, sometimes those weeds just get through. Even something as simple as stuff coming through the cracks of your driveway, if it's anything like mine, we've got them too. So what you do is you take a gallon of white vinegar, a half a cup of salt, and a half a cup of liquid dish soap. Any brand will do. I prefer something that's biodegradable as well as one that's plant derived myself. You're going to need a funnel. So then what you do is pour 1 cup of vinegar from the gallon bottle set aside to use and put salt in the gallon jug. The funnel works great. Shake it until the salt's dissolved. Fill it with the dish soap simply and simply shake it up and mix well. Set it aside. Obviously, we want to mark this weed killer. Now, because of our ingredients now, you don't need to draw on a little skull and crossbone, because there's no rat poisoning, or there's no aluminum, there's no anything that's really going to hurt your kids. Really, if they take a nice big gulp of this, it's not going to hurt them. Their mouths are going to be really clean, and the vinegar will probably flush them out and detox them a little bit. So it's our alternative tip of the week is also kid friendly, which obviously most of them seem to be. So obviously what you do want to do, put it in a spray bottle. I have found the dollar store locally to me has just all kinds of different sizes. So depending on how much you think you're going to need, depending on your space, if you're doing your yard, your driveway, your garden box, whatever, big, small, medium, you're good to go. Fill up your spray bottle, spray your area, and it's best to do in the morning. And as it heats up, as the day heats up, it will start to do its work. So good luck with that. And with that, that has been your alternative tip of the week.
Broadcasting live on network radio.
So turn off your television sets, turn them off now. Turn them off and leave them off.
So getting back to our conversation on organic, another website that I would like you all to check out is the Canadian Organic Growers Cultivars of Canada. So you can find that at www.cog.ca. Basically, they have a breakdown of the organic standards, and they are based on 7 general principles. And I didn't know this myself, so it's really interesting if you go there and check it out. Some of them, I'm not going to read them all out to you, but some of them include to protect the environment, to minimize soil and erosion, decrease population, what else? To maintain long-term soil fertility, to maintain biological diversity, to recycle materials and resources to the greatest extent possible. So they're it's very reduce, reuse, recycle, obviously. With that, actually, I'd like to tell you about my recent gardening project. If you actually look at the pictures going by, you will see a kind of collage of them, and it's a red coffee pot, and then a blue one, and then it shows a whole bunch of them up on a shed. And that's actually my shed. This is a project I started probably about 2 months ago. I call it my little secret garden. Not in the sense that you would think all cute and flowery, but it's my organic vegetable garden. So right now what I've done is, like I said, I've taken these red plastic coffee containers, and these are something that I've actually been saving probably for about a year or so. And I didn't want to throw them out. I didn't want to recycle them. I kind of just been stashing them wherever I could find room, just knowing that at some point I would eventually find something great to use them for. It was a kind of a combination of a couple of things I seen on the internet. I think it was like Pinterest and Facebook, and some of the things that I had put up on Facebook on Alternative Mummy. And I kind of just put my own twist on it. So like I said, I took these plastic containers, I spray painted them this really, really pretty teal color. It's actually called Aqua Seal. Aqua Sea. It's just so pretty. And then what I did is I took a drill and a screw, and I put some holes in the bottom of it for drainage, and then I popped them up, drilled them into the back of my shed, and I planted herbs in them. I've got basil, I've got oregano, I've got 2 different aloe vera plants. I think I have about 3 or 4 different types of lavender. I have lots of lemon basil because it's one of my personal favorites. I have some chives. Oh, you know what? I'd actually have to go out there to write down a list. I actually forget what I have. And then that's just what I have up right now. And I'm not actually in the middle of my second stage of doing my second set of them for the other side. And I've gone out recently and scored a whole bunch of free organic rosemary and a bunch of other things. My local supermarket, the garden center, was going on clearance. I went over there first thing, and the lady gave me the majority of what I got for free. They just wanted to pack up and get out of there kind of thing, so I was very happy to take the stuff off her hands. So those things now sit and wait to get planted. So to tell you actually a little bit more about my garden, I actually have a pretty big property. It's actually a double lot. I'm actually very blessed to have many mature trees on my lot. The sounds of birds is just overwhelming. I have just dozens of rabbits and chipmunks, lots of foxes we see at nighttime. And it's a very surreal backyard, I guess you could say. So it's just so relaxing and just so fantastic to be out there, with my hands in the dirt, and just to know that at the end this is something that is healthy for my family. It's not being sprayed with horrible pesticides or fertilizers or whatnot. So what I've done actually is I've made, I started last year with probably about a 6x4 above ground garden box. I went to my local handy store and I found some wood that worked great. It was probably about half an inch thick. I only got 3 of them because I used my shed as the one back part. I then dug up all the weeds and all the grass that was in that area, laid down some great topsoil, and away I went. So last year I grew some tomatoes, some jalapeno peppers, some onions and garlic, and I think that was it. I started out small. Well, I guess that wasn't small. I actually probably should have planted a little bit less for what was the space that I had, but I was very ambitious, we'll call it. So that being said, that's what I started last year. So this year I decided to expand on that. So I added 2 more, one being bigger, one being relatively the same size. And again, I only needed 3 pieces for the one because I used my back as half of my shed and half of the other garden box, as well as my second one I made this year. I only had to get 2 pieces because the one side was the other garden box and the back was the shed. So I'm very frugal. I try to save as many dollars as I can in any ways possible. So it worked great. I went to another local store and I was able to find some topsoil really cheap. I think I paid $1 for 20 liters of it. And then in it went. So this year I've added one of the boxes is just thanks to one of my brothers who got me a whole flat of super chilies and a whole flat of jalapeno peppers, and they are just doing fantastic, I might add. They've only been in there for about 2 weeks now, and they're blooming left, right, and center, and they're thickening up, and they're just awesome. I intend to make some hot sauce and some pickled peppers. So I very much look forward to that. So next year I'm going to expand on that, and the year after, and so on. And it's all about knowing what you're eating, right? So my family, I know for the next long time, is going to be eating very locally grown, healthy, organic hot peppers. This year we also have Tiny Tom tomatoes and Sweet Million tomatoes, regular organic tomatoes. Just a whole slew of tomatoes, because obviously, as you could probably tell, tomatoes are a great hit in my house. So, and that's the thing, you need to grow things that you know that your family consumes a lot. So now I actually already have probably about 4 or 5 tomatoes that I could go pick right now, put in a brown paper bag, and within a day or two be able to eat them, no problem. So it's great to be able to, you know, the grocery store and the farmer's market is extremely close to where I live, but my backyard's even closer. It takes even less time to get there. And that's just a great feeling too, that my kids and I grew that. It's a great learning experience for your kids, to get them getting their hands dirty. Forget about the garden gloves. Get their hands dirty, you know. Dirt don't hurt. Get your hands dirty, get your kids to get their hands dirty, and at the end of the day, they're going to see something that they grew. It's a learning experience, like I said. So the whole organic thing, like I said, is not necessarily a label. And when our guest comes on shortly, you're going to hear him talk about that as well. So one of the biggest complaints among families, like I said, is that it's too expensive. And like I said, you can do different things in order to make it so it's not so. We touched a lot on buying local. It's not always certified organic by the U.S. or the Canadian Department of Agricultural, but lots of the foods at the local markets are likely grown using organic methods. So also you want to take advantage of generic organic. If the grocery store is more your style of shopping, be on the lookout for store brand organic products, which are popping up more and more because it's all about the supply and demand that we're always talking about. If you're demanding it, they're going to supply it, and it goes vice versa. If you're not buying the processed crap, they're going to start producing it less. And more companies that aren't necessarily in the organic food now are going to start thinking, wait a minute, we're losing out. We're starting to see people aren't going to fill themselves with this garbage anymore. So we need to jump on this wagon of people being healthy, and we need to start offering this to people. Supply and demand, right? So popular grocery chains are now offering generic organic product lines that are significantly cheaper than the more expensive brands sold at the more higher end grocery retailers, and the ones that are, you know, like specifically your health food stores. And don't get me wrong, they're awesome, they're fantastic, and I'm their number one cheerleader, but in most instances they are very expensive. But that's because they don't have a lot of customers, unfortunately. So the more customers that they have, the cheaper that they can make their prices. But other stores are really starting to sell these things. So that was my whole point in that. And two, when you go somewhere and you see something that is on sale, or you can buy it in bulk without it going bad, do so. Buy it in bulk. Buy as much as you can. Obviously, without it going bad, like I said, it will be lower cost. So things like cereals and noodles and beans and sauces and stuff like that will typically last quite a while on the shelf, which makes stocking up on them when they're on sale a great way to maximize your spending power. And obviously, too, grow your own food. If you're not afraid of getting your hands dirty, you may also consider planting your own. You know, like I said, get your kids in there, get yourself in there. If you haven't done it before, don't be afraid. Just go for it. Like I said, last year was my real first year of trying anything, and now this year I feel like a pro. There's still things I'm learning. For instance, I just found out yesterday that if you take a penny, that's obviously made out of copper. Now you can't buy anything with them, but if you take them and add them to your garden, particularly your tomato plants or anything else that is prone to have slugs on them, and slugs are obviously going to eat away at your leaves and stuff, the copper actually deters them from coming and eating up your goodies. So just another alternative tip. I guess you got two this week. So another way is to become a coupon shopper. Now I'm sure we've all seen those crazy coupon stores, and honestly, I don't know how they do it. They go in and they fill up 3-4 shopping carts, and their, before coupon total is something ridiculously like $1,600, and then they get all their coupons running, and all of a sudden the cashier owes them $1. I'd really, really like to learn how to do that. That's some major organization skills, I'll tell you. And I guess it's just about networking and utilizing the internet to its full extent. I know there's quite a few coupon groups on Facebook, so if you have the opportunity to get on there and have the time to do something like that, all the power to you. And if you can, send in some pictures. I'm actually interested in any listeners. Are there any coupon shoppers out there? What is it that you do to become more organized in doing something like this? What are some tips and tricks? Send in pictures, send in an email. Just for other listeners, or all listeners, I can be reached at alternativemummy@webookyourshow.com for any questions or comments. If you want to post photos or questions or comments to the Facebook page at Alternative Mummy as well. If you haven't done so, like us. We're almost at 100 likes. But you can post whatever you want on that page if you found something that you've done at home that's natural and an alternative, and it's worked for you. Please share it with all of our listeners.
Are you like me and drink coffee and tea every day? I know I'm totally hooked, but I don't like the effects. However, I've tried this coffee and tea that not only tastes great, but is a much healthier choice. And I know that sounds impossible, but it's anti-aging, builds the immune system, increases energy, and it's GMO free. You've got to try it out at perceptioniseverything.com. That's perceptioniseverything.com.
Simulcasting on Global Fact Radio.
At this time, I'd like to share an article with you that I found on naturalnews.com. And if you haven't done so already, I encourage you to go check out this site as well. Tons of great information. They have podcasts, they have radio shows, videos, special reports, references, news and article, and it's all up to date, and it's just an abundance of information. So check that out if you can. Again, that's www.naturalnews.com. So this interesting article here, let me just pull it up, is called "Could GM Alfalfa Take Down the Entire Canadian Organic Farming Industry?" So this was published in October of 2012. So here we go. Organic farmers throughout the Canadian province of Ontario are counting the days until they officially lose their organic certifications as a result of potential commercial plantings of genetically modified alfalfa. Like in the U.S., government officials in Canada recently approved plantings of GM alfalfa, even though the crop is wholly unnecessary and will forever taint the integrity of non-GM and organic varieties of alfalfa, as well as other crops. So if this is going to affect the integrity of I find that very, very interesting. So if we know that already, so then why is this going to happen? As reported by Global Toronto, an upcoming meeting between conventional farmers and seed growers in Canada is set to iron out the details for how GM alfalfa will be implemented into the food supply commercially. And in the process, many organic farmers who rely on clean, non-GM alfalfa are having their valid concerns ignored by both the factory farming industry and, big surprise, government officials who are more interested in satisfying the demands of Monsanto than protecting the integrity of alfalfa. So to me, you know what, this is my interpretation of that. Money, 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 money! No more needed, basically. So the consensus among food scientists is that once it's out there, it will contaminate the entire seed supply. What that means is that we won't be able to grow the quality of feed for our cattle that we need to grow in order to meet the standards that's being established worldwide for organic food. So wait a minute here. Monsanto wants to make it so alfalfa is not going to be anywhere possible organic. So that means our cows can't eat it, which is one of, as we learned earlier in the show, one of the 7 rules or whatnot, if you want to say. The cattle have to eat the right stuff. So if the cattle isn't, then basically the buck stops there, so to say, because cattle's a lot. Natural alfalfa already grows quite well without the need for herbicides or pesticides, which makes Monsanto's chemical-resistant GM variety completely pointless. Alfalfa is also a highly volatile plant because it's a perennial, which makes the likelihood of widespread contamination with GM trails for the GM variety much more than just a possibility. It is an absolute given in the long term. But rather than protect the organic industry, as well as the integrity of the entire food supply from irreversible genetic corruption, industry forces are pushing to actually redefine organics to legally include small traces of GMOs. This would mean that organic food could legally be defilled with a certain percentage of GM pollution and still be considered organic. An incredible deception that will inevitably lead to drastic repercussions for the world's supply of untainted food. Canada currently exports roughly $29 million worth of alfalfa every year, an amount that could eventually plummet to $0 should the nation's alfalfa supply be taken over by mutant GM Monsanto varieties. It's absolutely ridiculous. Different places you could go to get information on this alfalfa outrage are places like globaltoronto.com and, like I said, naturalnews.com. You can find that article. So, in conclusion, I'd like to say, sadly, local and organic have had the misfortune of entering as separate concepts, and then basically an unclear concept. Like I said earlier, talk to your local farmers and find out maybe it's not labeled organic, but it may still be organic. Just ask questions.
You're listening to Network Radio, live from the Media Broadcasting Center. Simulcasting on Global Fact Radio.
Okay, and thank you for joining us. We're now joined with Farmer Shane. Thank you for joining us, Farmer Shane.
Hi, thanks.
Now, can you tell the people a little bit about where your passion for farming comes from? How are you Farmer Shane?
I do grow a little garden. I grew up on Concession 2 out in Princeton there, and, tobacco farmer, it was all around us. So, when I was 14 years old, I started working in tobacco, and then I spent 7 years in that. After that, I started to get a respect for, growing stuff in general. And that's pretty much where it comes from.
Nice, nice. So you say now, I've been told that you have limited space to do what you want to do. Obviously, we all want to do gardening on a big scale. But, you know, if you don't have the space, you can't do it, right? So how do you accommodate not having space? And what would you recommend to people, things that you could do if you have very limited space? How you could still reap the benefits of growing your own vegetables or herbs or what have you?
Well, all we have out there is maybe, you know, a quarter acre of land. So we have a small little garden, maybe 45 by 45 feet, you know, and that's 3 feet unused on either side. In that, we calculate, you know, I'm going to put like some beans here, 2 feet apart, you know, one row, beans here, 2 feet apart. You just keep going over that way. You calculate how much you're going to need for each plant, but just enough for each plant. So that way you can fit more in.
Of course,
Yes.
yeah. You want to maximize your space,
Yes.
right? So, you hear all these horrible things about fertilizers. What would you recommend to use, if anything, as a fertilizer?
Honestly, nothing beats cow manure, horse manure, black earth. You know, you can dig it up just anywhere. You know, you can go to an old farmer, you know, his old pasture. Hell, he'll probably let you take his poo. I don't think there's a problem with that.
Yeah. Well, hey, you know, if you could get it for free, even better, right? So what's your opinion on these other fertilizers and, you know, all these chemicals that are, I can't even pronounce half of them. Some of them have 20 some odd letters in them. What would you say when people say, well, you know, this stuff is healthy, it helps your vegetables grow, it helps you get more? What do you say to that?
The best thing to use is to figure out what each plant needs. Different plants require different calcium levels, different acidic soils. Some of them require like no fertilizer at all. They just feed off the sun alone. It all depends on what you want to grow. If you're growing peppers or tomatoes, you know, you need nothing more than just plain old manure. You don't need no special fertilizers for it. You spread it out in the fall, till it under, come the spring, and then you just plant everything in that. That's all you need.
Just as simple as that,
Yeah.
eh? It doesn't really have to be that difficult. And nowadays it makes you wonder what they used to do back in, you know, the caveman days without all these
You wanna know what?
fertilizers.
My little 45 piece of garden, it's just a small little patch that I've been growing on for the last, I don't know, maybe 5 years now I've been growing on it. I've worked that land pretty much by hand with nothing more than a hoe, you know, hand cultivator, shovel to get rid of things if you need it, and a rake.
Yeah.
I've had some of the farmers come in and plow it, you know, once, just to kind of till the soil.
Yeah.
It takes a lot to turn soil.
Oh, of course. Oh, I know.
It does.
I don't have one as big as you do, and
Yeah.
it's a lot of work. I know.
You don't even need something big at all, either.
Yeah. In your opinion, what's the number one obstacle farmers face in this day and age?
Well, in this day and age, I guess it all have to be the banks. That's pretty much what it boils down to. You can't blame it on nature because we've been farming for as long as we've been around. So things have always happened, yet we still continue to get through it because you kind of need to do it. But the biggest problem is they can't afford to do what they're being told to do, or they can't find the buyer because someone already controls who's buying that.
Let's talk organic for a minute now. What's your opinion? If you can't grow it, do you buy organic opposed to mainstream?
Well, it depends. What you can buy local, and you can figure out exactly where that's coming from. When you get down to the nitty gritty, you can figure out which farm that's actually coming from, and see whether or not, you know, if they're using, you know, normal fertilizers, you know, normal sprays. You do need to spray plants. People think that when you spray a plant, when you're spraying the crops, you're spraying all these chemicals on it. Technically, no. You're not spraying chemicals so much as when apple farmers, they spray the trees every year. They're spraying it with it's a type of natural oil from a plant And so they coat it in that sap or in that oil, and the bugs can't get onto it. It protects as a fungicide for the plant. Sometimes they'll do it for different crops and whatnot. I'm not too sure because I really don't know.
So what would you recommend to people then how to find out where exactly their food has come from then? How do you pinpoint what farm?
It depends who you go. You can figure out through your local supermarket. They tell you where is this coming from. They should tell you where it's coming from. If they don't, I don't think they're doing their job. I can grow my own tomatoes. Yeah. I don't spray them. I don't fertilize them with no chemicals. Does that make it organic?
I would say in that instance, yes.
Yeah, yes.
Yes. Now, when I go to the supermarket and I look for organic stuff, it's certified organic with the actual, real label and whatnot. But when you go and you buy locally or you grow your own, then, yeah, just because it doesn't say organic doesn't not necessarily mean that it's not.
Yes.
Yeah, I get. That's the point you're making,
yes,
right? Yes, I get that. Now, that being said, though, is when you have to take it one step further and investigate and find out where it came from and what type of fertilizers, if any, they use and whatnot, like you were saying.
How to investigate? Sorry?
Yeah, like when you're saying you find out what farm it came from and stuff like that, and you can find out exactly what they use and whatnot.
Well, during the season, you're able to find pretty much any vegetable that you need at any local farmer's market. They're all over. They have them in every little small town. They have them in everywhere, and you can go to the farmer and say, "Hey, what did you do to this plant?" That's the best way to go about figuring out where your food actually came from.
Straight to the horse's mouth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now you know not to mix hot peppers with regular peppers.
I know nothing about peppers.
Really?
Absolutely nothing. This is a first. I'm learning. This is a process.
If you got all hot peppers, it's fine.
Yeah.
But you can't grow jalapeno with a bell pepper because the bell pepper will become hot.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh.
So you can get hybrid.
So you can fake chili peppers by growing hot ones and regular ones, and they'll mix.
They will.
Oh, dude, that's awesome.
You want to know something crazy? In my little garden that I have, I've planted so many different plants in this small little area. Well, some of these plants will commingle with different plants. There was one year I had a waterkin. It was a watermelon pumpkin.
No way.
I'm not even kidding you.
Are you like Monsanto and you like genetically modified stuff now?
Frankie
Technically,
Foods.
no. I'm just giving them the materials. The bees are the ones that are doing it. They're cross-pollinating with other plants.
Speaking of bees, did anybody else hear about the 30 million bees dying in Elmwood, Ontario, Canada, being found?
Not a clue.
Think about that. Talk about it. If anyone wants to know more, there's some really crazy aspect of where we're going with this. Alternative Mummy's too nice to tell you what's really going on and how these people are totally killing you. So you got to tune in on Wednesdays at Truth Talk, and we'll bring you up to speed about the eugenics plan.
No, you're right. There obviously is a greater, obviously not greater in the good sense, but a grand scheme of things. Why is it that they're patenting the seeds? Why is it that they're poisoning our food with toxins and a bunch of chemicals that I can barely pronounce? Why is it we're given limited forced choices at the grocery store? Why is it that we're force-fed the convenience of fast food? Why are we a fast food industry now? Why are the majority of our foods in a plastic wrapper or a box? That's not how food's grown. That's not how food should be sold. There's a greater, there's a big plan. You don't want to know what this bigger plan is, so you want to avoid it basically at all costs. And
I'm just taking this microphone. Let me. I want to ask Farmer Shane. Have you heard of the Monsanto Protection Act and what it's all about?
No, sir.
Okay, so Monsanto, it's actually not called the Monsanto Protection Act, but that's what us critical thinker conspiracy theorists would be labeled it. Basically what's happened is Monsanto creates genetically modified organisms, seeds, stuff that is different from naturally growing conventional farming agriculture. And basically what happens is they'll cross-pollinate like somebody else's field across from them without even that guy could be an organic farmer, has nothing to do with Monsanto. His field gets pollinated from the GMO farmer downwind. He ends up being like, they test for this stuff. They find out that there's Monsanto genes in the field. Now they sue the farmer, little wee guy who couldn't even afford to use this stuff to begin with, is now being sued for his entire farm. They end up taking your whole farm because you have Monsanto's intellectual property growing in your field, even though you were fighting to grow without it. And on top of that, people are being harmed by the different things that have happened through the GMO process and the experiment that's going on. And not only that, but there's other aspects of very poor yields from using Monsanto crops and Monsanto products. And lots of things where farmers are now taking Monsanto to court, suing them, and have been starting to win. So Monsanto got their big lobbies down there, and they hung out with some of the people in the White House, and now they have passed a law where you can't even sue them if you proved them completely criminally wrong in court. And that's basically what the Protection Act is. They're not even liable for anything they do now, so now they can basically all safety and thought process of the future to the wind because they're, completely immune.
Wasn't there something about the farmers in India?
Yeah, the actual farmers in India, these people right now have had over 125,000 reported suicides because they have a stipulation in India where if the father was to die, his debts would be forgiven and his farm would be basically paid off. So these farmers are at dire measure, and they're using the Monsanto. They're hoping for the bigger yields. They're hoping for the genetically modified benefits. They end up having a terrible crop, or their crops die off, or it wasn't what they expected. They paid too much. They have to buy their seeds again the next year. And these people literally only see one choice, and they've all killed themselves. Do you have any comment on some of these things I've just thrown at you on Monsanto and their scamming?
Well, you mentioned earlier about the bees, right?
Yeah.
These bees are dying, you said, right?
Yeah, that's from the Frankenbees.
Yeah, the Frankenbees. Well, I don't have I just for my garden. I don't know.
Do you know what Albert Einstein said about the bees?
What did he say?
That if if humanity lost the bees, we have at most 4 years before we would all die.
You're absolutely correct.
That's crazy. And I like honey.
Without those bees, you can't have any plants. You need the bees. When I see a bumblebee in my garden, I make sure he's safe. He's gonna do his thing there. Wasps, they're not good. You gotta get them away. But the bumblebees, when you see a bumblebee coming through, he's a good guy. He'll help you pollinate your garden. He's the one that's going to go around, and he's the one who's going to find those watermelon plants, right? Those flowers. They need to go to a separate plant, the male plant. They need to bounce back and forth, and that's how you get a melon grow right out of that flower. If you were to get another pumpkin plant next to that, that bee would go to that pumpkin plant, and then would go to the watermelon plant. He'd impregnate pumpkin with the watermelon, and they'd make a pumpkin melon, where it is a pumpkin on the outside, and on the inside it is actually watermelon.
Would that be like a plumpkin?
You could call it a plumpkin. Well, what happens is they just cross-pollinate with each other in a natural basis. Neither one of them could bear seeds from that watermelon or that pumpkin in any way, whether they were back and forth. they become a sterile seed and you can't grow that. That's just how the process of nature works. But you can see that they will indeed create 2 separate hybrid plants just from the bees as the scientists.
Wow. So I guess my neighbor on the corner there that's got his bee farm going on is a real good benefit for me, eh?
Oh,
bee farms are the best to live by if you have a garden.
Oh.
They are second to you at that point.
30,000 bees.
That is nuts. I noticed all your flowers around here. Like, you got a full bloom back here. Like, there's got to be something crazy going on.
Yeah, that's Farmer Tom on the corner. Oh, you said it. All right, thank you very much for your time, Farmer Shane. I appreciate you coming out and sharing some of your wisdom and advice. If you could leave our listeners with one more piece of advice or tip, what would you say?
Well, get creative if you're going to plant some plants. You can plant anything in anything. You really just got to get creative with it.
That's a great tip. And following that too, you can actually visit us on Facebook at Alternative Mummy, and you can click on the album. I believe it's called something to the effect of The Nature of Things, I think. And it is just an abundance of pictures of different ways that you can garden. And like Farmer Shane said, you can really garden in anything. Myself, I've used coffee containers. I do above ground gardening myself. And it's just whatever works for you and your area. With that, I'd like to thank you for listening to this episode of Alternative Mummy. And like I said earlier, please stop by our Facebook page and like it. We're almost at 100 likes, so if you can share our page as well to your friends and family, that would be greatly appreciated. If you would like to see something in particular on an upcoming episode, please feel free to email me at alternativemummy@webookyourshow.com or post it on the Facebook page. This has been another episode of Alternative Mummy. Thank you for listening, and I encourage you to eat healthy, stay healthy, and be active.
Broadcasting live on network radio.
So turn off your television sets, turn them off now, turn them off and leave them off.